So I'm there standing on this freaking plank. There's a boat over there just in case, I drown. And I literally just took a leap of faith, man.
From chef to personal trainer, Kyle Smith's journey took an unexpected turn after a breakthrough moment during the world's toughest mudder.
I believe that when we are challenging ourselves and developing ourselves, we're allowing a river to flow.
Discover how breathwork and storytelling can transform limiting beliefs into powerful narratives.
My mission is the persistent pursuit of self-betterment.
Welcome to Entrepreneur in Action. Today's guest is Kyle Smith, a clarity consultant and developer of NLSE, Neurolinguistic Somatic Experience. I think it has something to do with trauma resolution and holistic healing, but I'm very curious. Welcome, Kyle. Tell us about NLSE and tell us about your business.
Sure, absolutely. I call myself a clarity consultant, and the practice is NLSE, Neurolinguistic Somatic Experience, neuro meaning of the mind, and in particular mindset. So I help folks develop their mindset and their mental fitness. And I define mindset as the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or our opinion of ourselves. And when we can improve that, when we have a practical definition, then we can have days where we're thinking higher or lesser of ourselves, and we know that's part and parcel to the process. So when we think lesser of ourselves, we have tools and practices in order to elevate that so that we are at least neutral, which is my personal favorite place to be, or we can elevate that further to be pumped up for, let's say, a sporting event or athletics, or to downregulate afterwards. So then the L, linguistic, encompasses what we say, what we think, what we write, and how we breathe. Before doing this, I was a personal trainer in the fitness industry for 13 years, and macronutrients are the building blocks to the body. There's carbs, fats, and proteins. Words are the ethereal macronutrients of the mind. So if we feed our mind quality words, we're going to have quality thoughts. If we feed our mind shit words, we're going to have shit thoughts. And so we make the conscious effort to think about our thinking. And that develops us into a much more aware individual of our behaviors. And it puts us in a position where we can direct our behaviors in the way that we want. And how does breath work as a language? So breath is the language of the body, where if we're breathing high and tight, we're good to fight. If we're breathing low and slow, we're good to flow. And so we can upregulate and downregulate, which is the only part of our autonomic nervous system, our lungs, that we can actually engage in. It's not like we can take a second and say, okay, I just skipped a beat in my heart. I totally actively did that. It happens just by itself. So breathing, we can actually consciously dive into, and we can regulate our internal temperature like a thermostat, rather than behaving to the internal and external stimuli like a thermometer. So when we understand we're in a place, setting around people or certain stories we have in our head, we can recognize when we're breathing high and tight, and we may not be consciously aware of it. However, it's happening. So we take a step back and think, whoa, I'm safe. Take a breath. Let it out. Down regulate, feel into the present, and then create space from the stimuli. It's just information. How we feel is not physiologically, emotionally, is not an indicator of our character. It's just information. And so we can look at that information, look at the stories, and dive into them. So that's how breath ties into language. And then we go into somatic, being of the body. And that's not just the physiological body, which has an intelligence that it can heal itself. We cut our finger, it heals itself. It can regulate its own things all by itself. Digestive process, passive participation. We eat. That's our active participation. The rest of it's just does it on its own. Our energetic body doesn't have that intelligence. It's timeless. We have to dive into the experiences or the stories. And when I say stories, I mean experiences of positive, negative. It could be dreams. It could be what folks would put as traumas. It could be anxieties. It could be goals that you want to accomplish in the future. A story can be written in past tense, present tense, future tense. So we have a lot of control in the present to perceive those futures and past experiences or stories in the way that we want. And something that was interesting in psychology is that time is not recognized as an objective measure. And the thing that has the biggest contribution to how we observe our future and past experiences. So anything outside of this 24-hour day, because all there is the present. There's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow. So our present state of being has the most influence on how we perceive the past or the future. So if we have a better state of being in the present, we're going to view both the future and the past with a little bit more light. If we're in a state of being where we're just stuck in the suck, then we're not going to be able to see that light. So we go into the stories, because those stories, those emotions are built off of themes that we've collected over the course of our lives, either consciously or unconsciously. And so those stories, we can dive in using the breath and our words in order to be able to alleviate ourselves of those intense experiences so that we can observe it objectively. It's not getting rid of the fact that it happened. That's uncontrollable. It is creating a better relationship with, or not even a better relationship, it's creating an ownership of the story rather than being a victim of the story. And then experience for the E is that it happens real time. It happens very quickly. My intention with all the participants, that anyone that ever works with me, is to collect as many aha moments as quickly as possible. So when we collect those aha moments, it's a pattern interrupt in our brain. So we get to go into neurology and neuropsychology. So we get to pivot. And then when we have that aha moment, what happens is there's a myelination. Now I'm just going on nerdy talk. Myelination is the strengthening of those pathways in our brain that inspires us to do the things that we do. And so those aha moments create that expansiveness for people to be able to open up their mind to see things from a much more open and collective view, rather than just a subjective, my life is a black abyss, tune in to some Taken Back Sunday, My Chemical Romance, and then go from there. And it could also be in the opposite direction too, because something I think is interesting is where folks often focus on the stuck and suck while ignoring the blinding light of having too much of a good thing. So I believe that a sweet spot is, if it was a range of 1 to 10, I think 4, 5, and 6 is a sweet spot to be. Not too high, not too low, just right. A Goldilocks zone.
Wow. Okay. So
that's my tangent, brother.
I love this. Thank you, Kyle. Okay. So let me tell you part of what I heard. So if we're just breaking down the words, Neurolinguistic Somatic Experience, right? So neuro is, of the brain, and we're using the brain to reinforce these stories or create new stories, change the stories that we tell ourselves. And that's going into the linguistic part, right? As you said, related to your background in fitness of the body, then it's like words that we feed our mind, where a meal is what we feed our body with food. The words are our food for our brain, and that react as well in our body.
Food for thought, some people might say.
Food for thought, yes. That's coupled with the breath. Therefore, it relates to the body, which is the word somatic, means related to the body. And so we're, rather than being a passive participant where you get a cut, as you said, or you're digesting a cupcake that you've eaten, now which you can't control through your mind, but you can control your breath. So that is the part of the autonomic system that we can control by taking a breath, how fast we breathe, how deep we breathe, what's the intention, what's our mindset when we're breathing, and then as that relates to our energetic body. And so, and what I hear is that you're coaching people, you're working with people for them to, get clarity in their lives, but also to be able to do some, it sounds like it's functional. So
practical practice, purposeful.
Yeah. So that if someone is, as you said, stuck in the suck, they can you're going to work with them on how to get out of that and to get to that good place. So I'm your new client, and I'm stuck in the suck. I've got some bad stories that have been rummaging around in my brain, and I need to not be thinking those, but I don't know how. Like, how would you help me, Kyle?
You know what? almost verbatim, the folks I work with come to me with the exact same sentence right off the bat. So the first thing is collecting information. So what I do is in advance of any session, when I first start with someone, I send a Google document in advance that has intake questions. So it's not just the thing. I'm trying to look for a theme rather than just what the thing is we're trying to solve, because it is an outcomes focused practice. It's not a problems focused practice. So thinking of where we want to be in relation to where we are now, and then we try to seek out reference points. So I send a document, and the purpose for the document is that it's super, super chill, where I get a document, you get a document, and literally we're both on the same page. There's no ambiguity. And so 24 hours prior to the session, that's when I get everyone to fill out the form. That way I can go into it and make some highlights. And then at the beginning of the session, what I ask is, actually it's mostly 5 to 10 minutes of tuning our vibes, as I like to call it. So just conversational, seeing how individuals are feeling, seeing how you would be feeling. How's the day impacted you today? And then there could be something lingering or not, and it's cool. And then after that, I guide the participants in a breathwork session. So I do about 10 to 15 minutes of breathwork where I don't have a particular modality of breathwork that I pick. I pick the modality based off of the person's present state of being and where they would want to be. So my goal is to facilitate the setting and the breath for them to be baseline. So if it's a scale 1 to 10, they're at 4, 5, 6. So they're much more down regulated. That way there's an accurate measure of the feels that come up, because this is, once again, all information. So goes through the breath work, and everyone loves the breath work. I think that's what really helps out, because sometimes there is some tough stories that we get to dive into, and the breath work at least creates a smooth onboard ramp to prep us for that exploration. And so after that point, peeps are feeling real good. As I like to say to folks, get high off your own supply of oxygen. However, I will say some of the community sessions that I'll be running in the future are Cannabis-Connected ones. So Cannabis-Connected breathwork storywork sessions, and that'll be I'm pumped. Then I ask the person, because sometimes a highlight or something of note or an interest, because I'll guide as well through the breathwork, just simply observe. You can see it, you don't need to interact with it. Make a note of what you see, make a note of how you feel. And then there could be something in there that we can explore that hits deeper. So then after the breath work, I ask, is there anything on or off the document that you want to work with? It's choose your own adventure. I think of myself more like an Obi-Wan Force ghost, where I'm there, but I'm not there. I'm like, I'm helping out. I'm helping out when it's good vibe. And so whatever the particular thing is, whether it's a story of frustration, and the onboarding for Get Unstuck stories are stories that hurt, haunt, taunt, annoy. And we can go into nightmares as well. Dreams can either be positive or negative. I've done a couple of dream sessions as well, which is pretty cool. So then we decide on a particular topic, theme, moment, a story. If they're open to going into, we'll go into. And I always say this right up front. I will never explore a story that someone doesn't want to explore. I cannot be paid any amount of money to force someone to go into a story that they are not prepped to go into. I can go around the story and I can alleviate the intensity. And then that way, eventually, if we envision it like a balloon, it'll pop and it'll just be no intensity at all. However, sometimes people want to venture into things at different speeds. So I'm respectable of that. Depending on the story, then we'll dive into it. Something that I do for folks on the fly is a Should Detox, and I play language games as well. So a Should Detox is where we are translating our words or stories or sentences from harmful to helpful. And if we're putting it into a cool woo way, like a woo style, it's transmuting lead stories into golden stories. So we're our own narrative alchemists. And so, it's going in through there, and everybody feels better at the end of the session, even if it's the heaviest story. And I've gotten to have a variety of stories that are pretty cool. And seeing the shift is so sick.
Oh yeah. So tell me about the shit detox. How would
Should.
you transmute, a lead story into a golden story?
Totally.
How does that work?
So it's should. And you want to know
Sorry.
what's funny? No, 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 it's okay. It's the second time it happened, so I'm assuming it's actually me. Second time this week, so it's a reoccurrence. Like
That's awesome.
I'm involved somewhere there. So should detox.
Yes.
And so the should detox, if you're open to it, we can do an example of it.
Let's
Sweet.
do it.
So we'll do one, and it could be a fun one. It could be one that you feel pressure with. It could be whatever. So we're going to come up with an I should statement. I should go for a walk. I should go to the gym. I should go to bed on time. Anything. And it could be I should pay off my debt.
I love doing this podcast,
Mhm.
and I have a great time. And I feel like the guests have a great time too. And then
I'm having a blast.
there's this part of me that's like, oh, I should focus on growing and finding ways to monetize.
Mm. Write down, type out, I should, you said I should focus on growing.
Yeah.
Okay. And don't worry about the validation behind the sentence, because that's the key stone. So anything that comes after that. So should, now, what I'm going to get you to do is read the sentence 30% slower out loud.
I should focus on growing.
Good. Now, describe the vibe, describe the feelings, describe the emotions attributed to that sentence.
It feels like I'm sort of forcing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a pressure to achieve some metric that would somehow improve my status.
Totally. Where do you feel that in your body?
My stomach.
Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense, 1 being the lowest, where do you think it lands?
7.
Cool. Sweet. So that's the first step of the should detox.
Yes.
So the first step is taking that should. And that's the thing with should, is that it comes with obligation. It comes with pressure. It discourages us rather than inspires us into taking action, because it's attributed to those negative feels. And then there's stories that can be along with that. So it could be a story with the theme of acquiring status and something that happened back in the day to which you felt like you did not have status. And that would be the story that inspires your present day behavior. So that's what I would go with on that one. So now we're going to translate words. So we're going to take the words should and we're going to turn it into could, and then give it a read when you wrote it out.
So I'm writing a sentence where I'm changing the should, where I should focus on growing, to a could.
Yeah. So now go, I could focus on growing.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
I could focus on growing.
Yeah. Notice the change in your tonality?
Yeah. Yeah. It feels more positive.
Give it one more read, slower.
I could focus on growing.
Describe the vibe, describe the feels.
Feels like I could enjoy it. Feels like a fun time, like a adventure.
Yes. Yes. So now we'll do one more where we're going to take the could and turn it into a can. Ooh, was there anywhere that you felt it in your body? Did that change at all?
Oh, okay. I could focus on growing. Yeah, I felt it more in my heart, I think. Like courage.
Yeah. Did the intensity change at all?
Probably an 8.
An 8. Ooh, yeah. Cool. So this is another thing as well, is that intensity is not inherently negative or positive. Is the amount of, emotion that is building up. So we can have a high amount of abundance and it be overwhelming. We could have a high amount of scarcity and it be overwhelming. So the scale of 1 to 10 is not right or wrong, where 1 is supposed to be or 10 is like too much. It's wherever it is. It's just information on it. So then we go into from could to can.
Okay. So I say the same story and I just say I can?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can focus on growing.
Good. Now for this one, take a breath in. Let it out. What comes to you? Any changes?
Yeah, this time it's like my mind, like I felt like gears spinning, like in a positive way. And felt calmer, just like, oh, now I'm doing my thing. And the intensity was more like probably like a 4.
Cool. So then, where'd you feel it in your body?
It was in my head.
It was in the head. Ooh. Cool how it moves, hey?
Yeah.
So we got one more, and this is a cool one from it's from the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. And there was a study that was done in it where it was at a printing room, and an individual for the first group would go from the back of the line to the front of the line. Hey, is it okay if I cut into line? And 64% said yes. Then they had the second group, went from the back of the line to the front of the line. Hey, is it okay if I cut in line because I have a meeting in 20 minutes? I want to make sure I get these papers there on time. 94% of the time, people said yes. Then what happens is they had the third group, went from the back of the line to the front of the line. Hey, is it okay if I cut in line because I have printer or paper to print? Which everyone's there for the same exact reason. And what they found is that 93% of the time, people said yes. So people ignore what came before because. So in saying that, we're going to go I can plus because. So we're going to add because to the sentence that you've created, which reinforces your opportunity.
Okay. So it's can again?
Yep. So we keep the can and we just added because.
I can focus on growing because it will increase my status.
Breathe it in. What is it about status that you desire?
I want to impress my wife.
Write that down. Just for a future note. I think that's a great driver. Who doesn't want to impress their lady, you know? That's legit. Honestly, when you said it, I was like, oh, I totally resonate with that. Oh, that's awesome. What cooler person to impress than the person that you love, you know?
Absolutely.
If you're open to it, would you be cool with reading it again 30% slower, and then we'll have a breath at the end?
Okay.
Oh, and then instead of status, put to impress my wife.
Okay. I can focus on growing to impress my wife.
Describe the vibe, describe the feels.
So that time, it's like buzzing in my head. Feels really nice, like a good buzz, like energetic. Felt kind of magical.
Are you open to one more translation?
Sure.
Instead of my wife, put myself.
Nice.
Then give that one a read. So what we're doing is drafting, crafting, and supercharging. We drafted with the should, we're crafting, and now that we figured out what the main thing is, we just turned the projection into a reflection. Because it's your wife would recognize your progress, and it's the progress that you want. It's just you want the benefits of the progress.
Yeah.
And why not impress ourselves? So
Yes.
give that one a read. Let's see how that one feels. 30% slower and breathe at the end.
I can focus on growing to impress myself.
Breathe it in. Anything change?
Oh, it felt kind of connected that time. Like it still had the energy in my head, but it was also in my heart, my chest.
So that's literally what I do. Oh, so anyone listening to this, do this. Get back to me and let me know what you think, because that would be so gnarly. It would be so cool.
Yes.
So that's how we change words from harmful to helpful, where we are our own narrative architects. And then we build up the breath in order to alleviate or to allow that energy to flow through us. And we go with the first principles, because breathing is the first skill that we learn when we're born, and talking is soon after. Yeah. So those are both things that we learn early on. And so they're skills, and it's having the awareness to think of our thinking in order to practice our words and practice our breath.
It's phenomenal. I feel like this practice would be so helpful in day-to-day. Like if you're going around like thinking about stuff, like someone like me, I might go around having all kinds of stories, that I'm thinking or trying to not think about sometimes. And then if you can like bring that attention and that focus and find like this technique that you've developed and that we just saw, is like a way of moving that story through a process so that it goes, like you said, from a negative or even an avoided thing to something that you've looked at, you've taken some time to process it through and turn it into a positive. And so I love that, because these are tools that a lot of people just suffer from not having access to, Kyle.
Yeah. I'm aiming to change that.
Yeah. So what got you into this? So you were a physical trainer for many years. And then how did you go from physical trainer to doing NLSE?
Steve Jobs has a quote where he says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards rather than forwards. So it was a lifetime of learning, and now it's just all been put together. Within that story, there were a series of different journeys or explorations and the lessons that I am grateful I got the opportunity to learn, whether it was harmful or not. Because I believe that pain and discomfort, like our perception of pain, is the blacksmith that forges us into the ultimate weapon. I believe that there is strength in resilience. And I really like, his last name is Edgley, Ross Edgley. His definition of resilience is a purposeful discomfort equals resilience. So purpose plus discomfort equals resilience. So resilience is the main theme across my story. And I believe that this is a practice to teach that resilience. Along that way, man, I had a solid chunk of adventures. I would say the most prominent shift in my mindset and my state of being and my perception of myself was in 2016 when I did the world's toughest Mudder. And that was a 24-hour obstacle course race. And it absolutely broke me down. It was awesome. And I've had experiences with Tough Mudders before. And a buddy of mine that got into Tough Mudders, he did the world's toughest Mudder. And I was making a post because I just had enough of my own shenanigans. And it was one of those posts of, I'm open to talking with counselors, therapists, whoever has any recommendations, send them my way. And I still have the screenshot of that. And it means quite a bit to me, because if I were to go back in time and speak to myself at that point in time, I would have the tools to be able to do that. And so it's a full circle experience. So that's why I view my life as post World's Toughest Mudder and after World's Toughest Mudder, because there was a process of that. So where it goes into the pain being the blacksmith that forges us into the ultimate weapon, we can have the pain in the emotional body and we can have pain in the physical body. The emotional body can create so much tension. There's no outlet. So even the physical body is like feeling loosey-goosey, and we still have that intensity within us, and there's no outlet to be able, like breath work, story work, Tai Chi, playing chess, whatever, maybe not playing chess, but an activity to be able to have that as an outlet. It's tough to process things. And what my biggest aha from the World's Toughest Mudder was breaking down the body in order to build up the mind, because I had an outlet. I forced all that intense energy out because I was just doing a bunch of shenanigans within that 24 hours and moving. And so then that created that space for me to be able to think and to be able to open up a different frame or place of awareness that I didn't have before. And then within that time, from 2016 here, I got into breathwork, what would it be, 9 years ago. So breathwork's been a consistent theme across my life, where it's an active meditation rather than a passive meditation. Now I've started with the breathwork as my meditation, and I've moved into passive meditation, being more that stillness, like what we envision when we think of meditation. Because I've been able to decrease so much clutter in my mind that I've been able to sit in stillness and not be agitated with myself. That was like, I was chatting with someone who does meditation. I'm going to be on her podcast too. And we were talking about that, and it's like, yeah, it was cool. And
do you
then,
do that? How do you do that? Because I
go ahead.
literally this morning I was laying in bed and I was like all these thoughts, and I even played the Calm app, like a 10-minute meditation from the Calm app, and I was like the whole time it was happening, my mind is like, they're gonna interview Kyle today, blah blah blah, all the things that are happening, and like, how do you declutter your mind? What?
It's very simple, and that's why it works. And it's just pen to paper. Because if we keep the stories in our head or the narratives in our head, it's stuck in an infinite area. It doesn't have a start, it doesn't have an end. So when we actually write it down, we don't write down things to remember, we can write things down to forget. And so if we're holding on to things that we perceive to be important, however they're not, then they're just adopted stories that have nothing to do with what we're doing. So decluttering and just writing everything down in stories. And the way that I frame the stories is I have a 4-step process for it. The first step is simple, where we title it and then we write it down. And it could be a paragraph, it could be 2 paragraphs, it could be a couple pages. There's no certain amount, it's whatever you feel is content, where it's enough. And so then you title it as if you're writing a book, or if you want to visualize it as if you're writing down what you're seeing on a TV screen. That way you're just observing it as the story. And you want to write this conversationally, with proper grammar, pronunciation, as if you're telling it to a friend of yours. So that would be the step to declutter, because when we can declutter it, when we remove it from our mind, it goes from a 1-dimensional to a 2-dimensional space. We create separation right off the first bat. That also introduces a microdose of exposure therapy. So we keep the stories in the head. We don't want to expose ourselves to it or others to it, when we can just burn the paper at the end. It's not a big deal. So we write it down for us in order to be able to get it out of there, to create objectivity and see it. And from that story, then there's 3 other steps that we would integrate. And if someone was just flowing, like just solo, then that's what they would want to go with. And then I'm cool with saying what the 4 steps. I'm cool with saying what the 4 steps are. We don't need to do it because it could take a little bit longer, and it's north of 80% of people cry. So, yeah, I see a lot of tears
Tell
going
us,
around.
what are the steps?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
let's not. We won't do it right now because
yeah, totally. The first step, which also answers the question of what to do with the stories, get them out of your head and write them down. Write them down conversationally. Title it as if you're going to see a movie or you're writing a book. Step 2 is to read it out loud. And it could be with someone there, or it could be solo. It still works. Then the next step, and that's also another point of exposure. So from head to paper, then we're saying it out loud. Another point of exposure. Step 3, read it again, 30% your normal rate of speech, or 70% slower, however you like to see it. And what you'll notice between step 2 and step 3 is, for step 1, people will read it and then they'll try to get through it as quickly as possible so they don't have the feels that come along with the story. So they get their mouths going, and it's motor mouth, and then no one can actually understand what anyone's saying because they're talking so damn fast. And so we slow it down so that people are not holding their breath in the chest. Because when we're trying to go quickly, we're holding our breath so that we can spurt out enough information to go through it. So when we slow it down 30%, and we're reading the story with more intention, more awareness, we're able to see the story as it is, a story. Then we're able to get some breaths as a side effect. So this is not the intentional part. It's a physiological side. So when people are crying really, really hard, they'll go. So when people are going through a story and they're reading it slow, it gives the body that opportunity to and expel or decrease the intensity of the feels. And then step 4, we integrate the breath. So at every period, the occasional comma, and sometimes and, we can put a slash or write down breath or whatever the flavor you prefer, just some sort of indicator of this is where I breathe. And so while maintaining that slow tempo, We breathe at the end of every sentence. And this is to flush out any residual energy that we've built up while facing the story. Because we don't go, we don't go over the story, under the story, around the story. We go into the story and we own it rather than it owning us. And so we go in to slay the dragons, and I actually like to think of it rather than slaying the dragon to get the gold, I frame it as becoming the dragon rider and owning the story and not allowing that story to be something that's against you, but something that fights with you.
Dragon is on your team now.
Exactly.
Oh, I've never been on a Tough Mudder, but I'm sure I would struggle with just the world's easiest Tough Mudder. So you went on the world's toughest Mudder, right? And you had a breakthrough. And you said what spurred you to go to that was that you had enough of your own shenanigans. So Tell me about that moment, that why it was so pivotal, and then it got you to a place where you changed your life so much that you feel you have a before and an after.
So beforehand, before the toughest Mudder, before I went through with making the decision to change where I was, the character that I was, I still had the good aspects of myself. I believe that my positive aspects have been amplified over that time or since then. And a lot of my less than desirable aspects have decreased a lot. So one would be, I used to characterize myself as someone who is a drinker. I haven't drank in 3 years, and I liked to drink. And I actually said that I wanted to take a 30-day break, and then it ended up being 90 days. And then it was on my bucket list to do a whole year. So I just did the whole year, and I just haven't gone back since, because I just feel freaking awesome. It makes for better mornings. In saying that, how I mentioned earlier, I'm much more of a practitioner of the cannabis nowadays. So there's a little bit of a shift there. And it's not a replacement. There's completely different intentionalities because, And so I finished that. I stopped that like cold turkey. And it was just based off of a decision. And so before that point, I just was not bringing my best self to relationships, and I wasn't bringing my best self to my relationship with myself. And so because I had a poor internal relationship, it rippled outwards into the other relationships. And it was a great learning lesson. Like, I had so many lessons through that point where, I look back on it very fondly. Even if there were stories that I felt had an intensity, I see them as they are, and they were just ingredients to getting me here.
So what was it like within this physical challenge that brought you to that point where you knew you had to make not just a change of like crossing the finish line, but like a change in your whole life? What was that moment for you?
The moment, this one was good. It was during the World's Toughest Mudder. And I believe that it comes down to observing our behavior and collecting enough undeniable proof that we are who we say we are. And so when I believe that the worse we feel about ourselves, the further off track from our mission we are. So I would consider myself a decisive individual. However, I wasn't sticking with my decisions. That was incongruence. So at midnight, because they had about 40 obstacles, and they would close some and open some so that there wasn't a whole bunch of people just being bunched up. And so one of the ones that they have is called Walk the Plank. And I've done them a couple times before in other Tough Mudders, where it's about a 10-foot plank, you jump into water. So this one was in Nevada. It was outside of Vegas. I could see Vegas like in the distance, and it was crazy because it was just darkness everywhere else around me. And I'm on their Walk the Plank, and it was a cliff jump into the friggin' water just in this valley in Nevada. And it was at midnight that it opened, and I thought I was going to be able to make it past it before it opened. I didn't. And so went up to this thing, and it was about I don't want to overshoot it. Let's say it was like 20 feet. I was going to originally say 30 feet, but I'll go 20 feet, 20 to 30 feet in between there. Higher than I've ever done before. How about that? That's the best way. So I'm there standing on this freaking plank. There's a boat over there just in case, I drown. And I'm just looking into this valley thinking, I hope I don't hit a rock. And I stood up there and I was already at the point of making a decision. So I didn't want to turn back on myself. So in that moment, I literally just took a leap of faith, man. It was just hope for the best. And it was really cool because I just decided to step off of it. So I just said, fuck it, stepped off of it. And then there's enough time in between when I stepped off to when I hit the water where I had the thought, this is taking longer than I thought. Or should I be there already? It was gnarly. When I had this thought and then I hit the water, I was like, wow. So stepping into that decision, I believe, worked as a catalyst moment because it was something I was very fearful of. I didn't want to do it. And it was at midnight. So we started at 10 a.m., I believe. Yeah, it was 10 a.m. that we started. So from 10 a.m. and then I kept on going up until midnight. Midnight, went off freaking plank in the dark. It's crazy. So I believe that would be a moment where I began to trust my decision making, and it became better since then. Much, much better. And then what's another part? Decision making. And then,
and following through.
Yeah, and following through. Exactly. I think that was like a big like step point. And I hadn't thought of that because your question was really good because I was thinking of where specifically, and I didn't go that deep into that moment before. So this is cool. I'll probably write a story about it and then four-step it, to be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. So you have breath work with like oxygen connected sessions, and then there's also, you're going to do in the future cannabis-connected sessions. Like, what is that? What's that about for you? Like,
so the intent, I'll go with the intention of supercharging. So how there's ketamine connected therapy, how there's mushroom like facilitation for psilocybin therapy. So it goes along with the same theme of using a plant medicine unless it's ketamine, but using this thing to supercharge this thing. So that's the thinking behind it, the philosophy behind it. The cannabis puts us into a gamma state where we're much more receptive and we create more openness. So I like to do two written parts. So it goes breath work, first written portion, cannabis connection, written portion, breath work to close it out. So it has bookends, and then there's the adventure in between, and then we get to flow through it. So it just it just brings you into much more of a mellow state to be able to go into it. It's a feminine plant, so it's there to embrace you. It's there to hold you. It grounds you. And so what happens is if we feel that anxiety, it has nothing to do with the cannabis plant. It has everything or much more to do with what we're ignoring. And so when we have that combination of the cannabis bringing us into a grounded state, feeling what feelings are coming up and exploring where those feelings are rooted, because the cannabis brought it to the forefront, what was already existing. And so having that combination of it and the combination with breathwork as well, it's theorized, or you get to release DMT. There's DMT breathwork where it is dimethyltryptamine. Yeah. And that's the God molecule. So that we have that in our mind. So it stimulates that idea. So that's why I like to say we get high off our own supply. We literally get high off our own supply and release the DMT. So then that combined with THC allows a much more euphoric sense where we have that interconnectedness with our body, ourselves, our stories, and then being able to have that openness to explore it.
Okay, so if people want a different experience than they would get from the breath work, and as you said, like they become more in the gamma state. What's that mean? Like the gamma state?
Receptive. So when we're studying, that's the best time where we're able to absorb the most amount of information.
Okay. So it just puts you in that zone where you're more receptive already. Yeah. Because maybe sometimes people, they want a different version of getting there.
Totally. And so my thought with it is that everybody has the same desire for the same outcome. It's the modality, is the transportation to which we get there that varies. So what I like to do is not thinking of it as this or that, it's this and that. So the NLSE works with or without the cannabis. Cannabis works without or with the NLSE, similar to how therapy can be used without ketamine. Ketamine can be done in other contexts as well. So it's finding the tools that supercharge each other to get to the same outcome. And I believe that outcome is a state of presence, a state of practice, a state of abundance, and it starts from the within and it goes without. And it's interesting. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
And so, like you said, like the states, right, are interesting to me because I know you mentioned earlier, you like ideally want to like you want to be in that state of 4, 5, 6, right, which is like in the middle. Can you describe to me like what's the difference between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, and then so why? Help me understand why you want to be in that 4, 5, 6 for doing NLSE.
Absolutely. That's a cool question. I like that. So 1 is closer to us not feeling anything at all. So if we don't feel anything at all, then it's obviously not something that's important enough for us to pursue. If we feel a 10, we could have a 10 out of 10 abundance, or we could have a 10 out of 10 scarcity. So it's the emotional pressure that we feel within. So if that's the highest high, and then if 1's the lowest low, then the sweet spot is 4, 5, 6, because that's where we are. I like to say it's energy neutrality. It's equanimity. We have a balance between this and that. We are the past and the present. We have embodied the characteristics of that story, or we have embodied an aspect of ourselves that we are denying by confronting these stories. So even if it starts at a 10, where it's, oh my gosh, I'm so pumped up, I'm so excited, or oh my gosh, I'm in the stuck and suck, then we down regulate that. So even if someone is super excited, like consciously, they're like so pumped to impress my wife and me, so freaking pumped. And then we decrease that so that we create more balance within it, so that we can be in the moment rather than hyping our moment up.
So if we're super like elated, excited, like off the charts, like super pumped because we've got so much energy, it's hard to like relate to other people because you know we still have to communicate. So we have to like come down a little bit from there so that we can be in a zone, like an area where other people are, you know, as well, and that so that we can communicate. Because also, I think there's a compression to the wavelength when you're like at that super high level. Like there's not a lot to communicate there. It's just hell yeah, fuck yeah, you know, like we did it. You know, like we're at the top. There's nothing more to really say there.
Totally.
There's not a lot of communication that needs to happen besides that we're on top of everything, of wherever we want to be, you know?
So something that ties in with that as well is that I think that there's a 1-to-1 ratio for our feels. So for example, dopamine is a limited and renewable resource. It's limited in the amount that we get per day, so we can use dopamine lightly. However, it has a 1-to-1. So let's say, for example, you're at a 4 intensity and you perceive, experience, story, whatever, or the circumstances are just shooting you from a 4 to a 10, there's going to be a drop from a 10 to a 1, and then it's going to have to build back up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you're back to normal. So I think that by being able to regulate and modulate not only our sorrow, but our joy, then we find that sweet spot. Because by pursuing our, like, a joy without any intentionality, it's going to also harm us.
How could it harm us, pursuing our joy?
I'm going to go with an extreme example. let's say someone gets into meth
Okay.
and they're like, damn, why do they have to make drugs so tasty?
There we go.
And then we find ourselves delusional.
I see. That's why we have to add the intentionality so
Correct.
that we don't just go into that, the
Yeah.
world of heroin and meth.
Yeah.
Okay. And that makes sense, right? Because, we want to pursue healthy lives. And so how do we, okay, so let's say that people are at those two ends, right? They're either at a feeling no energy where something's unimportant, or they're feeling a 10, like they're extra joyful. How do you help people learn how to regulate so they can get to that kind of middle area where people are still full of energy, still excited about life, but also can communicate with others effectively? How do you get them there?
I would actually say that I don't get them there. I facilitate the opportunity to get there. That's my controllable factor, is creating the opportunity for that person to be able to explore it. As a side effect of the practice itself, it just happens naturally. So you get the outcome being the feeling as a side effect of doing the practice.
So through the NLSE, through the breath work that's connected with the body, through changing the stories, and all the work that you do with people, that's able to give them that opportunity to move from the extreme states back towards a 4, 5, 6 state.
Yes, correct. And so something to add to that as well is that our body and like our being, us as human beings, we desire neutrality, like a homeostasis. Because if we're either or, our body's not going to function to the best of its ability. So if there's too much stress, either good or something that you could be anxious about or excited about, it's going to take a toll on the body. And so that would be, that part just popped up there.
And that just shows up as like you said, they have to reduce the energy because they go from one to the other, and then eventually they still get back to normal. Like totally. A blood sugar spike.
Yes.
Where you go up.
Exactly.
Then way down and then slowly back. So in this podcast, we focus on the 4 F's, right? So finance, fitness, family, and fun. So
I have my own 4 F's too. I'll share them afterwards.
I want to hear. Oh, no, tell me now. I want to know.
I call them my 4 F's of fate. And I pick fate. I'm not a gamer. I like watching gameplay while I'm working. There was a scene in the video game God of War Ragnarok where the main characters are speaking to the oracles. No, not the oracles. The thread weavers. So in Greek mythology, there's the thread weavers. Each life is represented by a thread, and these are the ladies that make those threads. Now in this version, they were trying to change their fate, and the leader said, "We don't create the future. We just look at the person's past behavior in order to make a likely prediction." And so fate to me is looking at the behaviors and the doing, and that's an indicator of the future. So my 4 F's of fate, starting from, because it's based off of, it's pretty awesome. So it's based, first thing, non-negotiable is fitness, and that's either physical or mental fitness. Then the next level up is finance, also a non-negotiable, whether it's paying off debt or accumulating wealth or whatever the goal is, going on a trip, going and, I don't know, getting that freaking joint or soda or something like that. I'm just coming up with things on the fly. So those ones are objectively important. And then the things that are subjectively important is fellowship. And I define fellowship as the people we make space for and the people that we spend the most time with. That's our crew. Totally Lord of the Rings inspired, 100%. I'm a nerd that way. And then the final one is fulfillment. And fulfillment is that joyous abundance that we get to experience. It's cool that you got 4Fs, bro. Like you said, I'm like, oh my gosh.
So cool. I think that there's a close relationship too for our 4Fs. That's really cool. Okay, so let's move on to the fitness one, because you've mentioned you had a whole career where you were like coaching people with fitness, but also I want to talk about your personal fitness as well.
Sure.
Like, so we spend time working, doing our businesses. So how do you stay fit? How do you promote your physical, your mental wellness?
So it starts with the frame of the outcome. So for context, I'll start with that. And the outcome that I desire is longevity. So what I do is based around longevity. So it could be whatever the goal is, and then deconstructing it. So in saying that, what is it that contributes to longevity? Strength training and walking and making data-driven decisions when it comes to your food intake. And I also have a very big focus on first principles and second consequence frames. So I like to think of the simplest thing that's going to give me the biggest leverage. So I want to do as little as possible and get the most amount as possible, purposefully. And people may not think that's possible, and I will say nay. So then for me, I have it very high on the priority list, because I know that if I don't take care of myself, I'm going to be useless to everyone else around me. And that's my opinion of why it's important for me to take care of my physiological well-being. So my meaning behind the activities is important enough for me to take action, even if I don't desire it. Because I think of feelings are not facts, feelings are just information. If I were to wait for motivation in order to do something, it's unlikely that I'm going to do it, because motivation doesn't show up when it's convenient for you or me or anyone. And I frame motivation as similar to a flaky friend. They're awesome when you get to hang out. However, they're unlikely to show up when it's moving day. Motivation is the same way. Are you going to wait for that flaky emotion to show up at their convenience so that they can help you out, or are you just going to do it anyways? So that's my frame when it comes to those parts. And then what I do actively, I try to make sure that I hit minimum 7,500 steps per day, because no matter what I do, as long as I can walk, I can be healthy. Simple. And so walking is a huge emphasis. And then recently, because I'm going with more longevity, I've been doing a lot of unilateral work. Not so much unilateral. Not so much. No, it was unilateral work and a lot of lower body work, developing it, strengthen my back, and try to fix up some pesky imbalances.
So unilateral work means like you're doing like strength training, like one side at a time? Totally.
And unilateral work doesn't have to be strength training as well. It could be balance based as well.
So what kind of exercises are you doing?
So because of my laziness part, in the gym across the street, we got ourselves a couple solid free weight machines. So they're not cable, they're still weight plated. And I really like those ones because they isolate what I want to work on so well. And that's important for me on this one. So let's say, for example, it would be shoulder press on one side, then the other side. And it's just ensuring that my core and my torso are not going all over the place. Or if it could be anything like that. So it's just one side at the time, then the other.
So your core and your torso, like if you're doing it with two sides somehow, how would that be an issue if you're, doing it with bilateral, using both sides at the same time? How would it negatively affect your core and your torso?
So it's the core and torso works as a side effect. What I'm focusing on is strengthening where I have imbalances. So let's say, for example, the right arm is stronger than the left arm. The right shoulder is stronger than the left shoulder. I believe my left leg is stronger than my right leg. And so it's just evening out those imbalances because I don't want those imbalances to have long-term detrimental effects.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So that's why you do unilateral work, so you can measure, like, actually, I am doing 25 pounds on my right side and 25 pounds on my left, rather than
Totally.
50 pounds where my stronger right side is actually doing 30 pounds of it, and my
Totally.
left weaker side is only doing 20 pounds.
And then it's like, how much is my body contorting trying to do this?
Okay. Oh, yeah. I always wondered why, I'd go to the gym and people would be like doing one side at a time. I thought, well, that's inefficient, because if they were doing both, then it's twice as fast.
That, two truths can exist at once. I think that what's important is understanding the intentionality behind the movement, because then the movement makes sense. Same with life. If you understand the intentionality behind the behaviors make sense.
Yeah. So your intentionality is longevity. What have you, when did you get into that? Why did you get into that? And what have you discovered?
I would say that I got into it early because I started in the gym pretty early on in my life, and I just like physical activity. And I'll still strength train as well because it increases bone density and muscle tissue. And bone density and muscle tissue are the greatest indicators of longevity, or two of the better indicators of longevity. And then I ended up with this focus within the last 2 years, where I started integrating a more hybrid model where I would do weight training and cardiovascular work as well. And that all ties in with a couple bucket list items that I want to do too.
So what are those bucket items for you?
Sinister Sevens in July. That one. I just gotta say the go ahead on that one. It's pre-set up. I also want to do a triathlon. There's a solid chunk of places that my lady and I want to go hiking. So I want to make sure that I'm fit for that. And we have a lot of travel that we want to do as well. So I want to keep the health and wellness for that. And I'd definitely be open to another World's Toughest Mudder. That's been pondering recently. I really dig that idea and things that come along with that.
But so Sinister Seven, some of these things are like running for like 100 miles. I'm just
gonna do a leg of the race. It's not gonna be the whole one.
I'm wondering, like, how does running work with all the strength training? Because some people say, like, hey, you could pick one. You could be really good at running, or you could be really good at strength training, and it's tough to try to combine them. But how do you feel about that?
I feel like that's hogwash, because why is it that we would focus on one while being open to sacrificing the other? Because muscle and bone density are great indicators of longevity. So is cardiovascular health. And you can lift the weights faster if you want. I'm just lazy, and I'd rather just go for a walk, or I'd go for a ruck where I'll just have weight in my back. Usually it's my laptop because I have my office in my backpack. So I'll carry around 20 pounds in my back or on my back, and then just go for a walk. That way it's a weighted, there's an application of weight to exert the body. So it just makes walking tougher. Now there is the component where you're only going to build so much muscle, and you're only going to get your cardiovascular so high. So it comes down to the importance of the person. Do they want to be strong? Do they want to be strong in their strength or strong in their breath? And then that's why I think, why not combine both? Because then you get a more versatile hybridization aspect to your training, which to me also brings a lot of fun into it, because I like versatility. So I'll go lift stones with a couple of buddies of mine. So I'll do stone lifting, and it's like epic. So much fun. So I think capability to me is the highest priority towards longevity. If you're super strong, you're going to be incapable of other areas. If you're cardiovascularly freaking set and maybe you're not as strong, you're not going to be able to do some other things. And it's cool for whoever wants to do either or. I prefer to enjoy as much as possible.
You want to be versatile and ready for any situation. So like if they drop you into like a jungle somewhere, mm-hmm. and all you've got is your backpack, like, yep. You're ready.
100%. That's exactly it. It's just increasing, because this is the thing that all living things have in common. This is what existence has in common, and it's the pursuit of survival. And so if we're not pursuing a form of, if we're not pursuing something where it's maybe a microdose of survival, then we're going to become stagnant. And if we don't have a flow, then that stagnancy is going to turn into a swamp. If we're going out and doing and challenging ourselves through discomfort and through challenges that we choose for ourselves, like no one else has to do the world's toughest mudder. That was just the modality that happened to work for me. I believe that seeking that discomfort is what's important, because when we are challenging ourselves and developing ourselves, we're allowing a river to flow. If we're not developing, we're not challenging ourselves, that water is going to become stagnant and turn into a swamp. So that's how I break that down.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. I like that because it speaks to, it could be any skill or any ability to do things with your body as well as with your mind. And we have to exercise those things. That's interesting because, you could have a skill that you've developed early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you developed fitness early on, right? Now, if you had moved away, I can tell you're still doing fitness based on our conversation and, that you have bulk in your body, right? So, but had you moved away from that, which I've heard people do. In fact, there was that show where that guy's like, I'm going to intentionally lose all my muscle and go for fat, right? Mm-hmm. Because as a trainer, his thesis was if he spent a year having the same body as some of his clients, where they felt trapped in a bigger body than they wanted, and then he could take himself back using his abilities and being a personal trainer, then he could have a sense of what it was like. Not that he would know everything about what it was like, because even when he's going into it, he already knows how to get out of it. Mm-hmm. Right. But so is that how we all are, though? Do we deeply know that we know how to solve all of our own problems already?
It's known as Solomon's paradox. So the whole point of Solomon's paradox in the Bible, in the story, he was known for his wealth, his riches. He was known to be given the best advice. And then you look at his personal life and it was crud. So we give awesome advice to others. We just don't reflect it upon ourselves. Everybody knows how to do the things, and there's no limitation to knowledge. It's a limitation on experience. So I totally believe, like, it's not hard for someone to make a decision. I'm going to go for a walk today. And that's the advice that they would give to a friend that was like, how would I start to lose weight? Go for a walk, homie. It's all good.
Go for a walk. Yeah. And then that speaks to, as you mentioned earlier, it's your habits and your actions that show what your likely outcomes are going to be.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So Solomon is dispensing all this wonderful words of wisdom and not taking action. So it doesn't matter that he knows it.
Advice. Yes.
Doesn't matter that he knows it, because he's not taking action, and he hasn't made it habitual.
Totally. The only thing he's made habitual is telling people how to do the same thing.
And I think that's part of building trust. I think that that's part of like this, right? Where you're, we're doing an interview, and, I'm talking to you, and this is going to be shared with an audience, and people are going to see it like, okay, Kyle not only was a trainer, but look, he's got, the body of somebody who goes to the gym and trains, right? Mm-hmm. That's still in you, right?
Totally.
Now you've progressed to your new career. Did you invent NLSE, or is this like, did you study somewhere? How did that come to be?
It's an amalgamation of the interests that have got me the results and the progress that I've desired. What it's made up of. So breathwork, I did that for 6 years prior, or 9 years now. That one I had practice, whereas a skill that I can just go into and it's all good. And then the other part that combines with that is the story work aspect. And that one I went through, it's known as the Enlifted program, ENLIFTED, and they focus on story work. So it's the same process, the practice that is here, put that, or what we did with the should, with the words, that was the story work aspect. And then the breath work, I combined the two so that I can have a supercharged practice that people can implement. And then
so you're the originator, you're the creator of NLSE.
Yes, sir.
How cool is that?
Dude, it sounds freaking gnarly when you hear someone else say it, that's for sure. I can tell you that. I just felt like a huge oomph in my heart space, in my solar plexus, where it was like, oh shit. Yeah, it was good. It feels good, man. I'm very proud of it. It's helping, it's contributing, and I honestly view it and frame it as my life's work. I don't see myself pivoting to anything else unless there was a hobby. That's it. Because now I get to spend time thinking about this and doing this. And if I had a hobby on the side where I was exploring it, then I would. But right now I'm good.
What's your vision 5, 10, 20 years from now for NLSE? Where do you want this to go? In terms of how big do you want to take this? Do you want to keep this small? Do you want to train other trainers? How do you want to do this?
I frame it where it's building a stadium rather than building a house. So I'm starting with the big picture in mind so that I don't have to build the house and destroy the house and build the foundation all over again. My big vision for it is to have it as a practice where, I got a couple parts on it. So a couple things that I want to be able to do with this practice. The practice is conceptual, meaning that I can do it anywhere on the world. And I can do it with anyone that has stories in their head. Even if there's a language barrier, I could still probably pull it off. Which is pretty cool. Actually, yeah, it is. Because I had a couple sessions with a fellow from Finland and then someone from the UK as well. And that was pretty cool. It wasn't super crazy. However, anyone who has words and stories is totally fine. And the goal with the practice itself is it lines up with my own personal mission, my own personal statement. And my mission is the persistent pursuit of self-betterment and to be a positive contribution to the human race, to be a sovereign savage servant. And that philosophy is ingrained into NLSE, where other people get to become their own sovereign, autonomous individuals, pursuing self-betterment, becoming contributors to maybe not the human race, but to their kids, to their partner, to their company, and then being able to flow with that. So everything's underneath that arching umbrella. And I wanted to have that for context. So what I want to do with it is also work one-to-one, one-to-many. So it could be online, in person, and then also work with businesses to improve the identity of the business macroly, and then from a macro standpoint, and then from a micro standpoint, develop the individual's autonomy within that business, and then have the whole goal. Because the frames that I go is we start with getting unstuck. That's the whole first phase. And then the second phase is celebrating the wins, celebrating process. I teach people how to take a compliment. It's pretty crazy. And then, because very few people, answer me this one, Michael. How many people have you heard in your lifetime say, I'm great at taking a compliment? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not many, man. And so it's simple. It's just say thank you. Done.
I like
and
that.
So developing the business, and then it goes into goal setting. And so it's a target, story, outcome. So what's the target? What's the outcome? Or what's the target that we're aiming for? And what's the story? And then what's the plan? And that creates a trifecta. We can also do it with, I like another frame of it where it is the frame, which is the target. The frame is the story. That is what we see through. Yeah. And then the focus is the target. And then the floor is the plan. So the floor is where we're going to build up the floor so that we can achieve the things that we want. So that's how I would integrate it into business. And what I have for as an intentionality for businesses as a collective is over time, as the business has become, and the individuals within the business are focused towards an outcome, and then everything's just moving smoothly. I want to integrate a 3-day holiday, same pay with like starting later, and have it run like a well-oiled machine. Because something that's crazy, there was a study that was done. The average amount of work that someone does with an 8-hour work, like they have 40 hours per week, on average, they get 3.62 or 3.62, about 3 hours of work done, like real true work done per day. So that's 5 hours of not doing work where they could be doing something for themselves. And I think that would increase the overall enjoyability of a business, while increasing the profits for everyone and increasing a focus to which it's smooth. And then I also want to be able to, and I also want to work as an intermediary between folks. Like, let's say someone starts out as a homeless person, they go to whatever their program is to get themselves all like done up and all set up and like going through the process. And then what I want to do is have the integration phase where we get to dive into the stories and the words and the breath. And then I also want to work with a buddy of mine who also does the story work aspect and works with blue collar workers. And his crew, he teaches welding. He can teach welding. So I want to introduce a trade to these folks that just went through this crazy change in their life while adapting their new stories to fit their present state of being, while also having that opportunity to work in a pretty sick job. So I have a couple ideas, and I believe that the people that resonate with it and that work with it are going to be able to perpetuate it outwards. And the reason why I put NLSE separate than like me as a character is because I want to see NLSE becomes its own thing. So right now I may be the personal brand, the face of it. However, I want it to become something that can extend further past me.
How are you going to do that?
Well, working my ass off and having fun with it. So it goes into phases. So main phase is being awareness and connection collaboration. So that's why I'm actually on a podcast guest tour. Yay! And so that's one part where it's just being able to speak on the things that I wish to share, and whoever resonates with gets to explore it. Because all I can do is introduce, and either by choice or by chance, a person's going to choose what they want to do.
So what are your family goals?
Well, for family goals as a whole, I would say that they've already been fulfilled. Kendra and I, even together, our main goals are, we're both developing a thing, because she does sales and absolutely crushes it. So she's working on her thing, and then I'm working on my NLSE. And then we're both working towards a shared target, which is camper vanning all around North America, because both of us are on a computer, so we have that flexibility. And then from there, as NLSE grows, then we'll be able to partner where we're just partnering up to be able to crush it, because our skill sets are going to be so freaking refined at that point. And neither of us want to have children. We have plenty of nieces. We have tons of friends that are having kids, and I'm totally cool with being an uncle. I love it, because I can still positively impact the kids that I'm around too, which is cool.
So so what are some of the things that you guys do together, like that makes you feel like that sense of like really good like family, like vibes?
So one thing that we have as a regular practice is 5 p.m. every Wednesday is designated date night. And everybody around us, our whole fellowship knows about it. Nobody asked us to do anything on date night unless it's something like, hey, we want to invite you guys to this thing. Are you open to coming on date night? And we'll probably just say yes. And then another thing that we do is we often have debriefs at the end of the day. So we'll just hang out on the balcony, likely to smoke a joint. Going to be transparent there. And so we'll smoke a joint and we'll debrief on the day. We'll celebrate the wins that we have created. So we'll go with 3 wins each, for example. Whether we say it's 3 wins, we'll talk about the wins of the day and then talk about things that we're planning on crushing tomorrow. And that's what maintains the accountability to each other. Because I think that communication allows people to not have to interpret thinking, because nobody can mind read, and whoever thinks they can mind read, I call bullshit, or a bovine excrement.
It's super important. Communication for relationships. You can't do it. There is no relationship without communication. So you're finding that time of day every day to check in with each other. You have some shared goals, even though like you're not working on exactly the same project right now, but you have a sense of where each other is going, and you're checking in with each other. You're being accountability partners. You're supporting each other that way, and you're debriefing. So you get those things out and communicated from inside your head, so that you can riff on and figure out like what are the best next steps. I think that's lovely. That's a wonderful thing. Tell me some more things. Like, what do you do with your nieces, or some more things you do with your partner that make you feel like family?
What does feeling like family mean to you?
Yeah, what does it mean to you?
There we go. Feeling like family. Yeah, I'm someone when it comes. I'm cool with my solitude. I will be honest. I'm not super family oriented. Not in the sense of not caring about family. It doesn't take me much to fulfill that desire for relations. I will say that there's more of a quality of time rather than a quantity of time. So, of course, we go to Thanksgiving dinners and stuff like that. With my parents, we would go and visit them wherever they are, because they live in a RV. So we got to go. We did a Mexico trip we did a road trip around the Gulf of Mexico, and that was pretty cool. So I believe that it's the time that the things that matter to me the most when it comes to family and fellowship is the quality of the time, not the quantity of time, because I want to do my stuff and I want to allow other people to do their stuff. That way, when we come together again, we have something cool to talk about.
You have your own adventures, and then you talk about, you share your stories.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. That's what family means to me.
What about this road? Okay, what about a road trip? Because I'm curious, like, how does that work?
So my parents live in an RV, which is pretty cool. And my stepdad travels for work, like different locations. And earlier on, my brother and I moved out, and so my mom was in a house by herself with her dog. And so she said, why don't we just sell everything and set up an RV? And so they decided to do that. And then they just go and travel like wherever the locations are, or they go on their own adventures. And when was it? Oh, maybe it was like 3 years ago. I forget which year it was. However, they were in Florida. So we went down for Christmas. So we got to get away from the cold up here in Canada and made our way down to Florida, flew into Florida, and they had their place set up. And then we just RV'd with them, went along the Gulf of Mexico, got to have some crawfish down there, plenty of smoked foods. There's a lot of really good breweries down there. And yeah, that was pretty much how our adventures went.
Right. That sounds like a lot of fun, because you're escaping the winter, the cold, frozen winter. And you got down to Florida where it's nice and you can go to the beach, even in the winter. And then you get to have like crawfish. Are you cooking your own crawfish at this place?
Not at this one, no. We went to a place called Crawfish Town, USA, and it was awesome. It's so good.
And this is for like a week?
I believe it was 3.
3 weeks?
2 to 3. It feels like it was long.
So this is a family who loves each other. You guys are not strangling each other. Like,
nope. There was only one moment. I think we're also really reserved. Like, we were pretty chill overall. There was only one moment where we had high tensions, and everyone just like sat in silence and chilled, and then we were just hunky dory later. Yeah, we don't strangle each other or anything like that. It's pretty chill.
It sounds really sweet and very wonderful, like a wonderful way. And now this is a lifelong memory.
Totally. I'll also share another funny part too. There was one day that we were there, and I was coming out of the RV, my parents were talking and I overheard my name. It's like, oh, you guys talking about me? And they're like, my mom's like, yeah, we're just saying how much better adult Kyle is compared to teenage Kyle. And I was like, that's legit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I took it as a compliment because they obviously observed my changes as I've grown.
That would be a tearjerker moment.
It was a good one. I actually, in the moment, I didn't think of how impactful it was until like later on when I reflected on it. I was like, hell yeah, that's freaking awesome. So it's
That's
cool.
amazing.
And that's the thing that I think is really, now I'm just reflecting on it more. And I think that's something that perhaps maybe, no, I don't like using perhaps or maybe. That's brutal. I'm sensing, where's the topic? It's right there. Something that I find when I'm working with folks and it comes to their parent stories is that they still view themselves as the kid and the parent, rather than eventually over time there becomes that equanimity where it's a balance. And I believe that that's like a contributing part where my mom was able to recognize the changes I made, while some other parents may not want to recognize changes and want to maintain their own perception. And kids the same way. Actually, like reverse wise too. We do the same thing with our parents. Oh, my parents, I've known them for my whole life. They're never going to change. Well, no shit. You're not giving them the opportunity.
What an amazing opportunity it is when we're not actually supposed to be in a conversation. Like, that's why you had to have this trip together, because you could have that, fortuitous accident that you walked in on a conversation where they're talking about you. They weren't planning like, oh, Kyle's going to come here in a minute. Let's talk about him so he hears some good stuff. They didn't know, They're like, he's off at the bathroom. He's off getting some grilled, crawfish for us for later. By the way, how awesome is this guy now compared to when he was a kid? My ears were ringing. You come in, like, that's such an awesome experience, right? And the fact that they recognized that growth in you must have made you feel just some kind of elated inside, that to get that recognition from them.
It was different. Like, it was really cool. It always feels good. And I think things hit harder from parents in contrast to like friends. And so, yeah, it was a good vibe.
Like you said, yeah, because they're their parents, and we, as much as we don't want to necessarily be, we still sometimes see ourselves as they're the one with all the power, know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about fun. What do you do for fun? What's the most fun you've had lately?
The most fun I've had lately. Let's see. For fun, I enjoy creating and building. So how I frame things is through art, science, and magic, where magic is just science that we don't understand yet, and science is just quantifiable data that magic exists. And creativity in art is what we've created from the mind. So what I like to do for fun is I like to work. That's one thing for sure. Like, I enjoy working and I enjoy what I do. Communicating and just hanging out with folks that I haven't chatted with before is also fun. Like, that's why I love podcasts. Get to speak with people that have no frame of reference of the character that we presently are. And I find that quite enjoyable. It's really cool. Outside of that, I like to walk a lot. And I walk a lot and I think a lot. I do a lot of thinking. Once again, that's usually work related. However, it's still fun. Enjoy going to the gym. I like lifting. I like running. I like going camping. I enjoy mountain hikes. I enjoy movies. I like going to movies. I love movie popcorn. Like, just, oh yeah, so good. And yeah, I'll smoke a joint every once in a while. I really enjoy smoking the joints. And travel. Yeah. And I enjoy cooking. I love to cook.
What do you cook?
Depends on what I want. Before I was a personal trainer, I was actually pursuing a culinary career. So I was aiming to be a chef. So I was in the restaurant industry for 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days.
What made you change? What got you out of being, you still love cooking. So
Mhm.
what made you change from pursuing that to being personal trainer?
Uh, there was a friend of my mom's at the time was dating someone who was a personal trainer. And at that point in time, the restaurant industry environment was taking its toll on me. And so I wanted to have a session. He offered, he's like, yeah, come on by for a session. We'll have like 2 or whatever, and we'll just like train. I'm like, sweet. Yeah, I'm totally down. And got introduced to the training aspect. And it's interesting because now I look back and from like a practical coach, I wouldn't give a lot of his advice again. However, it was the experience in itself that presented a route that I did not think of at that time. And that was around the time that the movie 300 came out. And that's when they started doing, and Spartacus, Blood and Sand. Those are like 2 of my favorite movies, or one's a show and one's a movie. And that was when they started doing the training behind the scenes. So that's when the superhero movies, they would put the training, like what they do at the gym. So I was really into that. And because superheroes are in comic books and have been a huge part of my like framing my philosophy of how to live, which sounds crazy. In a sentence, that sounds like a lot, but it's pretty chill. And so it was the experience of what he brought to me that I wanted to duplicate. And so I wanted to go towards something that was healthier. That was one. So I had a desire for change. And then I was had the exposure to someone who has experience doing it. I liked that style. And so then I decided to pursue it after that point.
So you were the stuff you were you cooking like your ideal food at the time? What I know you got like pressure at the job, like we've all experienced it, right? There's a boss who's
Mm-hmm.
maybe like not being considerate, or maybe there's like too many things coming at you, like
Mm-hmm.
there are, you know, pressures that can happen, right? But were you otherwise, besides pressures, were you like cooking your
Oh,
ideal like favorite foods?
I would even, you know what? I would say, because every once in a while I'll still do a cooking gig with my buddy Calvin. Anytime if he asks me, he's like, hey, you want to do a couple hours of cooking? I have no problems going and doing that. So I'll still go and do it. So it wasn't what I was cooking. And I actually like the environment because something that the kitchen has that I really enjoy is that it's a motley crew of individuals. They're like the pirates of the work industry. I started when I was 15, and I can say that this was an aha moment on my like life as well, where when I was 15, started in the restaurant industry, went into high school. The high school I went to had a apprenticeship program that was connected to NATE up here, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. And so I can get my practicum hours for my Red Seal in culinary while I was in high school. I didn't do well in high school. I ended up graduating where my social mark was 49.5%, and they ended up rounding it up to 50 so I could get my final credit to graduate. However, it was interesting because according to my school, I didn't do really well. However, I was already finished my practicum hours for my post-secondary before people even knew what they were doing. And so that was a very huge aha moment where it's not the modality, it's learning how you learn best in order to be able to adopt the characteristics and behaviors of someone who's successful in whatever that particular venture is.
What's a social mark, by the way? Here I'm in US and I haven't heard of that before.
What, sorry, say it again?
You said it was a social mark, like
Social.
45, 49.5%, and they rounded up to 50% to
Oh,
graduate.
so that's like the average. So in high school for my social studies curriculum.
Oh, for social studies. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So overall, at the end of high school, I was at 49.5%. And so for me to be able to pass, they rounded up to 5 or 50.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite food to cook? Like if you had a kitchen with all ingredients
Mm-hmm.
and all the tools,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just like, cook one thing that's your favorite thing ever. Like, what would you be cooking?
One of my favorite things to go with is a salmon marinated in brown sugar, grainy Dijon mustard, honey, and rum. That's marinated. And then that's cooked on a cedar plank that's been soaked for minimum 24 hours. Just saying. Just saying. Don't want to put in a dry plank. And then that goes along with asparagus and pineapple, grilled pineapple that was marinated in sambalik and rum. Put that on the barbecue. And then I really like potatoes. So I'd probably go with like some sort of a chipotle seasoned sweet potato combination. I think that would flavor out really well.
Oh, that sounds great. I've been fasting for 2 days, so
Oh yeah. Yeah.
smell
Yeah.
those things. As
How was that description? You're like, oh my gosh. Cool.
I was wondering if I was going to break my fast today, but I think after that, I have to. Where can people find you? So people who are watching and they want to work with you.
Anywhere on social platforms, I'm Dapper Dude Kyle, DAPPER DUDE Kyle, KYLE. And I have a podcast. It's called the Limitless Life Podcast with Kyle Smith. I took a break for this year to work on my practice. However, there's over 100 episodes that you can explore there. If anyone wants to email me, I'll actually give my email too. clarityconsultantkyle@gmail.com.
3 words, no spaces. Dapper Dude Kyle. Got it. Okay, cool. Kyle, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I've loved hearing all your stories and your experiences. I think people are going to love this.
Cool, man. I very much appreciate it. And man, we freaking slayed it. I'm so stoked to go pee.
All right, man.